Hey, welcome back. It's Monday. We are starting a trial term over bringing in a jury and all of that stuff. We'll see where that goes, but as I promised last week, I've got some press releases to run through and explain a few things. Isaac McFadden, 44, of North Myrtle Beach, he pled guilty before his case was called to trial, and he received 13 years in prison for that. That was trafficking in fentanyl, 4 grams but less than 14 grams, so that intermediate stage of trafficking. Timothy Dyson, 45, of Little River, first offense trafficking cocaine. He pled guilty, and his was between 10 grams and 28 grams, and he had a weapon on him. So he got 10 years in prison for the crack charge and then 5 for the firearm charge. But you're already seeing a difference between fentanyl and crack. There's mandatory minimums on both of them, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the fentanyl got 13 years, the crack charge trafficking got 10 years. Daniel Vargas, 33, of Myrtle Beach, he pled guilty to possession with intent to distribute. It's like having more than personal use, but not as much as enough to register for trafficking. But he pled to that. That was his second drug offense. So he got 10 years for each of those charges. One of them was fentanyl. One of them was, looks like methamphetamines. So Vargas pled to both, got 10 years on that, and that was a PWID. The other ones have been trafficking. Another case that ended up pleading was Aubrey Cook. He's 66 and lived in Myrtle Beach. He had a first offense for possession with intent to distribute meth. It was a lot of meth, 200 grams of meth, and he, after being questioned by the police, admitted that it was his meth. Aubrey Cook received a 15-year sentence for that. So all of these are pretty much real time. They're all 85% type charges. So Mr. Cook is 66. He'll probably be about 80 by the time they release him from prison. When I'm telling you about, and I saw a comment, and I think it's true, it looks like a lot of times, not in here, but a lot of times you see 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. Of course, there's a mandatory minimum, which may be 10 years to 15, or it may be 7 to 25. It depends on what the charge is, but mandatory minimums play a big role. And I think what happens is you have a judge that says, well, I gave Andy 10 years. There's really no difference between Brad or Connie. So they try to feed them out of the same spoon. When they get on the trial roster, we don't make any arrangements for any sort of plea bargaining. That's all on them. Sometimes that hurts us, of course, instead of asking for a double, triple time. But we just say, look, we're not making any agreements. You wanted a trial. We're ready for a trial. We're ready to go today. And they just stand up and plead guilty at the last minute, which is what happened here. I guarantee you next week, a lot of the trial roster will be broken down by people pleading guilty. We don't make any plea offers, but what happens is these people end up getting more time. But that 10 years that you keep commenting on, probably so. A judge says, I gave this other guy 10, I might as well give him 10. And 10's a nice round number. I don't know that there is a perfect number. I don't know if 11 is better, that much better, but it's real figures. It's not like you're going to bond out, it's not like you're going to be out in a quarter or a third. So I'll come back to you next week and tell you what we did this week. One more real quick thing at the end of this. What you're seeing is we send this trial roster out about 2 months in advance. And that's where we say we have had enough of trying to talk to you. We'll put it on the trial roster. And it's unfortunate, we don't want this to happen, but that's really when it looks like the defense attorneys are going to them and saying, all right, you're out of runway, you've got to plead guilty. You don't have any plea offers. You're in a lot more trouble than you were last month, but you got to plead because they're fixing to pick 12 and they're going to convict you, and then the judge is going to max you out at 25 or 28 or 18 or whatever the new number is. So generally speaking, the first case up ends up pleading guilty. Maybe it's a rape case, maybe it's some sort of shooting or stabbing or kidnapping, and then all of these drug cases start folding, all of these in a row. So we'll come back and update you at the end of this week, beginning of next week, on how this trial roster went.